He's also the author of this book, The 10 Things You Can't Say in America.
So that means we're going to have a short conversation. You can't say them.
Well, I think you probably will. What led to the book?
Just sort of an overall being fed up with political correctness, being fed up with, I thought, was an unfair debate on, for example, gun control, an unfair debate on the so-called healthcare crisis, a feeling that when you really look at the party platforms of both the Democratic and the Republican Party, both in the year 2000 seek to expand the scope and power of the federal government, which I think is inconsistent with what the Founding Fathers envisioned. I'm fed up with black leaders and black people blaming racism for all manner of problem in the black community. I'm fed up with what I call white condescension, and that's the failure of whites to apply the same standards of civility to blacks and to others as they apply to themselves. The book really is a wake-up call, I think, to America. Let's recheck our assumptions and let's get down to the original principles of the Founding Father, which was a limited government, a government that stays out of our wallets and out of our bedrooms.
Why, as you suggest, have people thought over the years these are things that you can't say?
Well, by that I mean obviously you can say them.
Sure.
We're going to talk about them, but I mean if you do, you're likely to be severely criticized, and not just criticized on the basis of your logic or your reasoning, but on the basis of your motives. The first chapter is blacks are more racist than whites, and I think I lay out a pretty persuasive case that in the year 2000, white racism is hardly the #1 problem facing the black community, but many black leaders insist that it is. And rather than say, well, Larry, you're wrong, here's why, I'm called a whole bunch of names, many of them I have in the book, Lou, Uncle Tom, bootlicking Uncle Tom, a sellout, an Oreo, as in brown on the outside, white on the inside, rather than to deal with the merits of the debate. I'm from California. And recently in California, the voters passed Proposition 209 to rid race and gender-based preferences. A local college, Cal State Northridge, wanted to host a debate, and they invited a prominent civil rights activist to debate the pro-affirmative action side. Whom did they ask to come to debate the anti-affirmative action side? David Duke. Therefore, if you are opposed to affirmative action, as I am, you are David Duke-like. I contacted the university. I offered myself to be that debate opponent, and they rejected me. And I think they did so because they wanted to brand anybody who's opposed to affirmative action with the brush of being a bigot. And these are the kinds of things that I mean. State Senator Diane Watson, during the 209 debate, she happens to be a black woman, blasted Ward Connerly, a black man who spearheaded the movement. Ward Connerly happens to be married to a white woman, and she said, the reason you are in favor of affirmative action is, against affirmative action is you have no ethnic pride. You're married to a white woman. You want to be white. That's why you are in favor of this proposition. Diane Watson is now ambassador to Micronesia. She never apologized. Indeed, when reporters asked her about it, she defiantly said, that's right, I said it. I don't take it back. Black politicians make statements like this all the time. Charlie Rangel in New York said at the 1994 Republican Congress, they don't say spick or nigger anymore, they just say let's cut taxes. I once debated Julianne Malveaux, a prominent columnist with USA Today, and I told her we must get away from this incessant search for the great white bigot and concentrate on real problems, problems with schools, problems of drugs, problems of the lack of job formation in the inner city. So we've got to stop this incessant search for the great white bigot. And she said, no, Larry, there is no great white bigot. There are about 200 million little white ones. And I have a collection of statements like that made by very prominent Americans who ought to know better. Yet the media does not seem to, in my opinion, apply the same standard as they would if a white person were to say that. The campaign manager of Al Gore, Donna Brazile, said of the Republican Party, they are the party of the white boys. Now, I submit to you, if anybody in the Republican Party made that accusation about the Democratic Party, which arguably is more accurate, since about 85% of Democrats vote for, blacks vote for the Democratic Party, they would have had to apologize immediately, perhaps even have to resign. Yet she never apologized, she never backed down from the statement. It was horrific. And so, Lou, that chapter has a collection of statements made by that, books that have been written by very prominent writers, including one in California who wrote a book called The Assassination of the Black Male Image, where he argued that the media intentionally puts the worst possible images on, presumably to make black people look bad, when in fact the opposite is true. If you look at the primetime lineup in movies, a black person is more likely to be perceived as a doctor, lawyer, dentist, or professional than is in real life, and is less likely to be perceived as a street criminal than is the case in real life. So these are the kinds of things that I mean when I say blacks are more racist than whites. I gave a speech recently at the ADL, the Anti-Defamation League. Good news, they commissioned a poll and found anti-Semitism in America at an all-time low, around 9%. But in the black community, anti-Semitism was about 4 times higher.